Dragons Bred Quick Bites. Really strange stories in a quick bite.
I saw what I saw!
I saw what I saw, but no one believes me.
Many of us are curious about what's really out there in the universe. Some of us search the skies in hopes of catching a glimpse of a UFO. And those of us lucky enough to actually see one may wonder, who is at the controls? Now imagine getting a chance to actually leave this earth, but not on a ship, but through what our ancestors called a vision. What worlds would you explore? What beings would you meet? How far out there would you go? Now imagine actually getting this chance, but being surprised by the fact that it's not getting out there that's the real challenge. It's figuring out how to get back. This is Hamilton Souther's story. Welcome to Spirinaturum, Part 2.
Going to the idea of discernment is very important. I want to go to the state of consciousness of somebody, creating an us versus them narrative out of any aspect of life. And then I want to go to why would there need to be just an outright denial and lie to the humanity if supposedly government is of the humans for the humans. It seems like that this brings up a deeper philosophical question for me around what's the responsibility of any kind of governance if it's hiding from the people what would be the most important understanding and discovery of all time, maybe a unifying discovery that could have helped end some of the collective global madness for the last 40, 50, 60 years. So I'm 23 years old. It's 2002. So first imagine that you're going from ordinary consciousness. You've been presented this cup of ayahuasca to drink. You drink it, and now you go through this wild transition, which can include vomiting, etc., to get into this other state. And now you're in the other state, and you find yourself outside of Earth. Boom, you're just in what we call outer space. I felt a pull. Didn't know where I was headed, but it became clear to me that soon to where I was headed was a black hole. Now you're headed for the spiral galaxy. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as it does that, billions and billions and billions of stars become apparent. And then billions of planets around billions of stars become apparent. And in the middle of it, there's this point of absolute blackness, this black hole. And it wasn't even a fade to black. It was just in and black. It wasn't a fade to black like in a movie and a reopening to light. It was off. And then on was, I was inside another planet, this gaseous planet. I was an observer of this life, so big. It was filled with other kinds of life. But none of that life was carbon-based. None of it had a body. Maybe a comparison would be like to Earth if the air were alive and you knew it. The closest thing that I would describe it as a comparison is like the aurora borealis of energy. And it was just not interested in me at all. It was just present. And I felt another pull. I don't know where it is. I have no reference for that, right? It's just some other galaxy. And I get pulled into the black hole of that galaxy. Then I appear in this other place. Only this time, it was a very Earth-like planet. And I'm standing on a beach. Only the beach is upside down. The beach is where we would have sky. And the sky is where we would have beach. It was like the Earth was inside out. It was incredibly alive. I couldn't say those were fish, but there was things in the water. I couldn't say those were plants, but things were growing. There were forms of life. There were these things that were like whales in the water. And like the way our baleen whales just filter water and just go. And there was no malice. And it was serene. And I remember it being unbelievably beautiful and thinking if I had a purpose there, I would stay. And then as soon as I thought that, I was again out of the planet looking back at it. I couldn't see the first two galaxies that I had started from. There was still a sea of galaxies, and it's trillions upon trillions. From that moment, it happened again. And I got pulled through the center of that black hole. I appeared in what was like a luminescent civilization. I looked around and it was a hustle and bustle place. It's like being dropped off, in one of our cities at like a main central point. It was packed with these beings. They emanated light. And I thought they were like truly an expression of beauty. And I remember that for the first time in my life feeling safe. These beings were taller and slimmer than humans, but completely luminescent. They had no physical form to them. They had no, what we would think of as like skin, muscle, bones, etc. You could look at them and you could look right through them. And the more I looked around that space, I realized that the buildings were made the same way. Translucent, crystalline, all of different shapes of light, mass scale, rivaling ours, if not much bigger. And interestingly, there were no other machines. The whole thing was incredibly aware. It was the first time that I felt like, oh, I've been identified. There's awareness here. There's literally nothing about the place that would perceive of danger other than that I had been enculturated to perceiving that way. And it came with an awareness that they had transcended that as a collective, that they had moved in their evolution beyond fear. I felt completely safe in that moment. And then it happened again. I felt another pull, tossed back out into outer space. I ended up it was another kind of a civilization. It was planetary, chaotic, but it was very sci-fi-like. Maybe kind of medieval in that sense. Beings, but no machines. Kind of robed figures, cloaked figures, hooded figures. And then it happened again. Outer space, and then through the black hole, and boom, to this place. And there are these beings there. I had no notion of who they were, but they knew me. And they were really glad that I was there. Received in celebration. The air was denser, and it was all luminous, and it was light. And it was kind of like halfway between water and air. And the beings that were there was made of it, in harmony with it, but individualized from it. All telepathic communication. No like big heads with brains on the inside and like a light of telepathy. No, just like these luminous beings that you could almost like see what you would think of as like light waves. No, they're just like these shapes, these forms. But it's kind of like a head and kind of like shoulders. Not much bigger than humans are, but there was just a lot of them. Out of them, the energy changes and is received, and a communication is taking place. They recognized me and looked back at me and emanated to me that they were glad that I had returned. They needed healing. Somehow, and I still also don't know this, I performed the healing on them. But there was a transmission of energy to them that changed them. And when that change occurred, their light essence was also altered, and then they would leave. And the next one would come, and the next one would come. Probably between like 100 or 200 in the vision. And then I was out in outer space, not even a goodbye. I ended up going through 6 of these worlds. When I came out of the 6th world and I felt the pull to go into the 7th world, I got really, really scared. Becoming terrified because I had no idea about how to, quote, get back. I was truly lost somewhere in the universe. I turned to the universe at that point, demanded to be brought back. Like, send me back, send me back. I don't know how to go back. I don't know how to go back. And I got pulled into that black hole. And the next thing I remember was I'm right outside of Earth, looking back at the Earth, and there's the moon and there's the sun. And I remember this feeling that I had in that moment of awe and gratitude, that there was something familiar. And then the very next moment, I was back in the ceremony, hearing these chants from these elders that were sitting next to me.
Thank you to Hamilton Souther for another great story. If you'd like to learn more about Hamilton and his work, visit the About page at bluemorphotours.com. If you'd like to stay up to date on the stories coming down the pike here on Dragon's Bread, you can read articles and get bonus content by visiting the Patreon page at patreon.com/tuiarts. You can also get every story by visiting the website at tuiarts.com. Thanks for listening. Stay true in the meantime, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Dragon's Bread.